Welcome to Create Your Happy, the podcast that empowers conscious women in life, relationship, and business. I'm your host, Christy Holt, happiness hussy and conscious funpreneur on a mission to change the world one beautiful soul at a time. Now get ready, because on this very special bonus season, we are going to take your entrepreneurial journey to a whole nother level. These uncut conversations are designed to support you as you unleash your entrepreneurial brilliance upon the world. My incredible guests and I have come together with a shared vision to empower women to fully embrace their humanness, find their unique voice, and lead with love. All right, gorgeous, it's time to get curious and become inspired. It's time to create your happy. Welcome to this week's masterclass. I am super excited to have with me today the beautiful Cortney Whitebay. She is a somatic business coach here to have this incredible conversation about how our strength is directly related to our business's strength, and how by improving our own personal physical strength, right, we can also improve the strength of our business. So welcome to the masterclass, Cortney. I would love for you to just share a little bit about your story, where you got your start, how you got into this. I know you have lots of education on the topic, but I know there's always some passion, a personal passion usually behind all of the reasons why we do the things we do. So let us know a little bit about who you are and what brought you to this place.
Yeah, totally. So I'll start at the very beginning. I was always interested in sports and activities. I never felt like I was very good at them, which a lot of them I wasn't. It took me 5 years to realize that I hated basketball. I played for 5 years. And then finally, when I didn't make the varsity team, I was like, holy shit, thank you for cutting me, because I never would have cut myself. And I cannot stand this game. And I was terrible at it. Obviously, that's why I didn't make the team. But I always played sports as a kid. I never really liked watching them, which people think is really strange, but I like races, but I don't like watching sports games and stuff.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
I mean, in the action, not just peripheral to it. Yeah.
Yeah, either in the action or it's a race. I don't want to see a game. I don't know why. I guess it's just not intense enough somehow. I have no idea. I don't know. So I was always interested in physical activity and the body, and I went to school because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. So I went to pre-med, and I took all my pre-med classes, my bio, my physics, my chemistry, my organic chemistry, my microbiology, my chemistry that I could not for the life of me pass, even though I thought it was so fascinating. I can't remember which one it was, but I took it twice and I was like, this is so cool. And the course was like, you're going to fail. And I was like, but you're so cool. And they're like, you don't belong in this group. And I was like, okay. But I finally, my last year of undergraduate, I was doing a multidisciplinary studies for my major, biology, chemistry, and athletic training. In the athletic training program, I couldn't take all of the classes because it wasn't my full major, but I was able to take the last class, which was exercise physiology. And that's when all of that other crap that I was trying to learn and loved finally clicked into place, because I realized oh, okay, these chemical reactions fit in here in our bodies, and these build on these, and these build on these. And I was like, okay, super cool. Physics when related to a bicep curl. Okay, I can do this. And then my only problem was learning which terminology we use. Different trainers use different words for different things. There's squats and Russian squats and military press and push up. So then I was like, oh my God, which exercise are they talking about? And the physics wasn't hard. The terminology became annoying because everybody has their own terms for stuff.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with it. So I decided I was still on the fence. I was like, oh, maybe I'll go for global health because I want to really help people get healthy. And I was totally, a child of the 80s and 90s where all this media was in Africa and trying to just build that up. And now in retrospect, I'm like, well, are they doing the right things? I don't know, but that's another topic for another day.
Yeah.
But I just had that oh, how can I implement something in a big way that's going to help a lot of people? But then the exercise physiology, I got into both master's degrees, and I was like, and I went for the exercise, and I have loved it ever since. I did fall into a category. So the cool thing, exercise physiologists, we can work as personal trainers. We can work in cardiac rehab in hospitals or outpatient. We can do stress testing. We can work with athletes, and we can do research. So 5 basic things that we can do. And it's sort of recognized as not licensed, but you can get certifications in it. So it's a little bit hairy on the medical side. For us in the United States and other countries, it's a little bit more clear cut and more valued. And so I did fall into the stress testing and the cardiac rehab, which I love the people. I learned so much, but it was probably like the worst job I ever had. And I learned so much because it was so awful. And that brought me to actually when I had my first baby. I now have 3 kids. No, three kids. I actually couldn't afford to work in healthcare anymore. So that's actually when I switched to my own business, and I started personal training because I actually was going to lose money every month between housing expenses and childcare expenses. I was going to, if it was just me on my income, I would have been going into debt more and more every single month. And I was like, that doesn't make sense to go have somebody else raise my kid in a place that I'm unfamiliar with without my family. And like, I'm not going to do this. So we actually moved back home, my home area. And I started Hudson Valley Peak Performance, and I've been doing personal training and health coaching and now somatic business coaching ever since.
Yeah. I mean, what a journey. And I think I love that you say that this was the worst job I had and I learned so much about it, because I feel like most of those experiences that we have that we're like, oh my gosh, this was like the worst experience. But also when we're not in it, because when we're in it, we're like, this is just the worst experience. That's it. It's very difficult to find the silver lining. But once we move out of it, we're like, oh, this actually brought me to this place. It gave me this understanding. It gave me this piece of wisdom. It took this idea in my head and allowed me to experience it firsthand, which we all know is very different than just having a theoretical idea in your mind. It's a whole nother level to have an actual experience of it. And so I think, that's part of the fun of life, is the trajectory that we're on and moving through those different pieces, whether it be, changing careers or your relationship shifting or your business growing and expanding. All of these things have their root in those challenging, they're challenges. They're not blocks or obstacles. They're only blocks or obstacles if you view them as such, which just is meaning you're not giving yourself enough power to overcome them. Otherwise, they are just maybe lessons. They're maybe things to learn, to grow into, to expand out of, right?
Yeah. And sometimes I think reflections too, it's like, or building blocks. I can think of a time towards the end. So I'd gone on maternity leave and then come back for a little while. Otherwise, I was going to owe all sorts of money to insurance and stuff. And I was like, I'm not doing that. So I went back, and it worked out for the company because they had already hired somebody to do my maternity leave, and she actually did want to stay. So it was kind of a win-win, I think. And we had this one patient, and for some reason, we tag teamed this patient. I think we usually just used to do one person does the other. I can't remember, but this one we tag teamed, and this woman was so terrified. It's a little bit scary if you don't like things over your face and mouth, because you wear a mask and for the bicycle part, and you bicycle as hard as you can. And actually, I think the part that she was really scared about, actually, I don't remember. I have no idea, but it was you put a mouth, like a snorkeling mouthpiece in and a nose clip on, and you do breathing tests first, and then you put the mask on, you get on the bike, you pedal as hard as you can until you feel like you're going to pass out. Promise you won't. Our job is to keep you from passing out or dying, but to like make you go just like to the point of where we can see that you might die soon, if you keep going. And then we really get back in. That's our job. It's fascinating that we get paid, $35,000 a year to take you to the brink of death and yank you back. And people think that's cool. To do that, I mean, like, we have a pretty big responsibility, and we need to know a lot in order to keep you safe as a patient. So like, really, there should be like better compensation for that, because you don't want jabronis just doing that job. But this woman, I swear, she was just like, she was so confrontational and so nervous and so scared. And, I was probably what, like 22 at the time, maybe 20. No. I had my first kid. So I was maybe 26. I was still young, right?
Yeah.
And this is my first job out, like my first real job out of graduate school, which I did work in graduate school, but like this was my own, and she was just, we had to do these tests, right? In our mind, we had to do these tests. If we didn't do these tests, then we weren't a good technician, and this was going to happen, and that was going to happen, and so and so wasn't going to make money, and like we had to, like there was no option, like we had to do these tests, right? Otherwise, I don't know, something ambiguously bad was going to be our fault. And so we tag teamed her back and forth, like not good cop, bad cop, but like trying to, like, different personalities, trying to get her to do these tests, right? And like over her head were like, all the things. And we were simultaneously really annoyed with this woman and terrified that we were going to get in trouble. And she left without doing them. She was like, peace, I am out. And we were like, thank God, and oh shit. And then, like, an hour later, she comes back and she's like, okay, I'm ready now. And we were like, okay. And she did the test and everything went okay. And then we got a phone call from our bosses. We did not work directly for the doctors whose offices we were in. We got a call from our office. And we're like, oh shit, like now we're in trouble. Like now we stepped in it, right? Just fuck. And we put him on speaker and he was like, hey, just wanted to give you a call because your patient called us and she was really grateful for how patient you were with her and how you didn't stop trying and believing in her and all of these things. And that for me was like a really big emotional intelligence wake-up call, because that made me realize that I was putting my own human, undeveloped, emotionally unintelligent emotions and frustrations on this terrified woman who couldn't control it. And it made me realize that, like, yeah, I was pushing through to try and get this test done, but I was pushing through obviously for the wrong reasons. I was pushing through for fear of failure, for fear of getting in trouble, not looking good enough, all the things. And it made me realize, like, holy shit, like when I'm working with people, I have to do it in complete non-judgment. And that still is evolving. And that, I think, was one of the biggest and most important lessons I got from that hellacious job where nobody cared about me or what I did or whatever. But in that moment, they did. And I'm so grateful that they came back and said that, because that put a check on me. And I was like, oh shit, like, I'm so glad that this happened. And I'm so glad that she perceived things that way. But I know I did wrong in this situation. I was actually wrong. I was kind of being a bitch. We both were. And I know better now. And I have just such a deeper perspective now. And I carry that with me through that. And I'm so grateful that she didn't feel that negativity during that time, and that she was able to take the other parts of it, the parts where we were trying really hard to get her comfortable with something, and she took that instead. And I'm just so grateful that she took that and not the heaviness.
Yeah. It's interesting how I think a lot of that probably was mirrored in the business owner's experience, right? Where we're frustrated, things aren't going the right way, we're afraid of getting in trouble, or that getting in trouble might be someone not liking us, or someone being offended by us, or someone not receiving us well. And so we
am I going to lose the client and the money that comes with this client because
right? And so we end up doing a lot of things that we think we should do. Right. So we get into this trap of, I call, like, shooting on ourselves, and we're not actually showing up in a way that feels good to us. we're going at it in a way that feels like we're minimizing the pain and suffering. And that's a completely different approach,
Yeah.
right? So when we are focused on avoiding the suffering or the pain or the difficulty or, the risk of potentially being seen, potentially being misinterpreted, potentially being completely misunderstood entirely, the potential of not having the money, not having clients, not having the friends, not having the business, all of those fears. And when we operate out of that place of fear and unworthiness, maybe of having it all, because that sometimes, in my personal experience, has undershadowed some of those shoulds, where I'm not standing in my power. I'm trying to create power instead of just owning my own, right? And so it's an interesting shift when we start to realize, okay, well, hold on a minute. Like, who am I doing this for? Yes, it's for other people in a way that we want to serve and help them. But how am I taking care of myself first, so that instead of operating out of these fears, that we can be operating out of an overflow of love and patience and acceptance? Because if we aren't, most often your client is going to feel something's going to be off, right? And so we need to really own our authentic selves, really get to know who we are and stand in our power, not trying to measure up to other people's expectations. They don't really matter, right? If we're confident and we are living the life that we know we are meant to live, and I know it's easy to get lost along the path, right?
Sure.
It's so heavy, the conditioning, the programming, the world has just been telling us since day one how to fucking be and how not to be. And so we're doing our best to fit into that because, well, we don't know another way, right? Until we do. And then when we start to see that the other way is actually like stripping away that stuff, those shoulds, those expectations, those performances, and starting to truly live in a place that is thoughtful, aware, you're observing your own contributions, that really shifts things. And so that, I think that will lead us into our next pieces of the conversation here very nicely, and tie the story into the topic of your business's strength being your strength, because your strength comes from within you, right? It doesn't come from pleasing the people out there. It doesn't come from doing what you're expected and supposed to do. It doesn't come from trying to get the results so that you don't have more pain or suffering, or you don't upset someone else, or all of these things. Now, it's nice, of course. We generally go through life and we don't want to necessarily go through rocking the boat and causing problems. That's not what this is about. This is just about caring for yourself first, so that the overflow is of love and acceptance. It is an overflow of abundance, not an overflow of lack and fear, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the ways that I see that the most, well, two ways, maybe. One is that they are shoulding. I talked to somebody yesterday and they were like, I just feel really comfortable with you. I was like, okay, that's great. And so that kind of gave me the permission to kind of say, well, here's what I'm seeing right now. And that is that you're self-sabotaging. Like we talked, Gay Hendricks, take the big leap.
Yeah.
Is one way that I see a lot of entrepreneurs or higher ups in business and government. They start to, oh man, they don't believe in themselves in a way.
Yeah.
And so they try to over prepare. They skip the sleep, and then they kind of go into denial. They're like, "Oh, I'm just stressed, but I don't have anxiety. I'm just stressed, but I don't have this. I'm just stressed, but," and like as if the stress is like outside of them. And it's like, well, actually, that's actually inside of you, and you're manifesting it to the outside, and then bring it back in again. And it's like this, like you're feeding it. You know what I mean? You have it, and then you give it more junk food. And that's one way I see people really sabotaging themselves in business, is that they're taking on too much and they are really neglecting themselves. And that's why I did develop the somatic business coaching, because if they're neglecting themselves, then that comes to like my part two is like they're neglecting their actual physical health. They're not exercising, they're not eating well, they're, all the things.
There's no
And
time, right?
there's no time. So now they're like, oh well, I'm just type A, so I have to do it all myself. I'm like, okay, well, what if that was a story? But where did you learn that? Where did that come from? Did it come from your upbringing? Did it come from society, your parents? Like, what made that the right decision for you? And then is it the right decision for you? Like, if you really think about it, is that what you wanted, or is it what you felt like or thought you should do because you've been inundated with this messaging for so stinking long?
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes people get quiet when you say that. Because it's a tough pill to swallow and it's something to really
Uncomfortable.
reflect on, and it's uncomfortable. And, if it gets a lot deeper than that, then I always recommend that they hook up with a therapist. I've got people on my roster. So I always try to also keep that boundary of like, I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach and a trainer. So I have to connect all those things because they're all related. But if you need to go deep on something, I'm going to recommend that safe space, but you can tell me whatever you want, but I'm going to recommend that to really work through it, you're going to go and see a person who is skilled in that particular thing. But yeah, so I developed the somatic business coaching because I was getting more and more entrepreneurial clients and management clients coming to me for aches and pains or chronic pain, chronic illness. And I noticed that the conversations were shifting away from like family and weather, and I always say the Kardashians, but I don't know anything about them. But just like media.
Yeah.
And they were shifting to issues that they were having in their business or at work in their jobs. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. This is like a beta test all on itself. And what I realized and recognized was the more we got our blood flowing and the bodies moving and all that sort of stuff, not only with my old clients do traumas come out. That is a very real thing. We say the issues are in the tissues and the traumas come out. So if you have big T, little t traumas and you start moving things, releasing things, exercising things, don't be surprised if you start to cry or if a trauma does come out, especially in yoga. That happens like an awful lot because we're asking you to tune in mind and body. But I've had it happen with just regular personal training as well. But what happened was these like little, not little T traumas, but like these frustrations, we'll say, in business started to come out. But not just the frustrations, the new strategy and ideas and creativity. So we had this space where they could dissipate their energy physically and let the frustrations kind of go. They sort of melt away, right?
Yeah.
And then because you're getting all those endorphins and your mood is so heightened, and you get all those happy chemicals, all of a sudden this like negative experience that you've been having over the last couple of days or a week or that morning, that fades away because that shit doesn't really matter, right? And then you get this amazing idea where you're like, oh, actually, I could just do this and that would solve that problem. Or if it's in a group, sometimes somebody else has that idea. Or sometimes I have that idea. And, if it's one-on-one, I like to like Google things and like put them in an email and send them to my clients so that they have that like right at the end of their session. In a group, I always recommend, and if you are listening and you start to exercise or go out for a walk or whatever, I always recommend that you have like your phone and you can dictate notes into your phone or a notepad or something like that. If you're going to be working out, and just pause for a second. It's not going to kill your workout. We're not training to be Olympians here. And just write it down, because if you don't write it down, the idea is going to go somewhere else, right? And you want the idea to stay with you, and you want to be able to realize that idea if it's for you. Not all ideas are for you, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
But you want to at least have the option to implement it, right? You don't want to forget it and then be like, that was the perfect thing. I can't believe I forgot it. So I always recommend like keep something right next to you where you can write it down and take a note of it, whether it's on your phone or on a piece of paper, because the ideas and the strategies and the solutions that come out are absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, when you start to, well, first of all, like you touched on, emotions are energy in motion. The more we resist them, the more we end up holding on to them. So if we can move in a way that allows us to transmute some of that energy and release it,
Yeah.
it can really create space. And it will also help us to stop just focusing on those emotions. And most likely, what we're focused on is our resistance to those emotions. That's what keeps them stuck, right? What we resist persists. So the more we try to stuff down and avoid and minimize or justify or any kind of other thing that we try to do to make ourselves okay with our emotions instead of just observing them without judgment. That's really the ticket for this one. But the more we can move, get that energy moving and transmute it, allow it to be without our judgment. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to experience all this. It's okay to be grieving and joyous at the same time. We're not limited to one emotion. We don't need to shut them down. The problem with shutting any of them down is actually we tamp down our ability to feel all things. So the more we try and tamp down and avoid those uncomfortable, quote unquote, whatever we're judging as uncomfortable, most of it is our thoughts telling us it's uncomfortable more so than the actual emotion being uncomfortable. It's the stories that we're attaching to it. And so we create this judgment and this resistance, and that actually keeps it sticking around instead of moving through us in the way that it's intended to be. And so that gets heavy, like dense in our bodies, and doesn't have space for new energy and new creation to come out. And plus then our mind can get really stuck on those thought patterns. And our brain is very efficient that way. Yay, brain for being efficient. However, if your repetitive thinking is not in line with what you wish to create, it becomes a problem. So we need to get out of that efficient thinking and be in more intentional thinking. And so moving the body helps us to create the space. And like, I also really think like the mindfulness that you mentioned of yoga. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be yoga to be mindful movement. It could literally be a walk around the block in which you are present and aware in this moment. My legs are moving. My heart is beating, my lungs are breathing, and just being very aware of looking around yourself, observing what is without the stories, without the judgments, without the beating yourself up or the shoulding or the running to-do list in the back of your mind. And so many of us are so trapped in that cycle that it's almost impossible for us to break free of its grasp. So the mind is just running, it's running, it's running. But by moving our body, we do allow the space and something else to focus on, right? Moving our body in a mindful way. It doesn't have to be CrossFit or anything that you might see as extreme. It doesn't have to be running a marathon. It doesn't even have to be balls to the wall, anything. I have found the most effective movement actually for myself has been very loving and nurturing movement that just allows me to reconnect within. And I found that to be so much more effective than, to be honest, those more extreme workouts when I used to run a lot and train a lot. It was an avoidance mechanism. It was a distraction from my thoughts because frankly, if you can barely breathe, you're not going to be so worried about what's going on in your personal life. It creates this forced distraction. And it's not much different than numbing out by watching endless hours of Netflix or drinking a bunch of wine or whatever, you're shopping online, whatever your vice is. We all have something that we do. And a lot of people will take exercise to the extreme, to the point where it's no longer healthy. It's now, a distraction over here. So I just want to encourage you that it doesn't need to be extreme. It can be actually very loving and gentle movement in order to really get connected with yourself. And when you start doing that, you start creating space for yourself, right? Space to become aware of those patterns, those limiting patterns, like you mentioned, self-sabotage. To me, I think self-sabotage always boils down to self-preservation. It is ultimately our way of keeping ourselves safe and protected from whatever scenario we would most like to avoid, whatever feels most uncomfortable, stemming from our traumas, big T, small t traumas. And so we've experienced some sort of discomfort. And so we as humans will go to almost all costs, even if they're detrimental to ourselves, to avoid feeling those those feelings of discomfort again. And so it's really, to me, it's not like someone's like, oh, well, I'm just going to fuck this up, right? I'm going to go hit my upper limit and I'm going to kneecap myself in this business. No, nobody's doing that. Yeah. But there's a part of you that craves the safety. And if that's not being created, if you're not creating the space, and if you're living in this kind of space of heaviness, there is maybe no space to create that, then it can feel like we're self-sabotaging ourselves when truly it's about creating safety. So how do we, start to create that safety for ourselves so that we can get out of our own friggin' way and stop cock blocking ourselves from all of the stuff that we truly desire and deserve, because that's the same. If we desire it, we deserve it. We're worthy of having it. It's not just fluff in our mind. It's there for a reason. It's for you to go after, for you to create for yourself. And so starting to get in touch with your mind and body, bringing it all together, is such a powerful catalyst to this. And having that compassion, which to me flows through that loving and nurturing movement, right? Not trying to kill ourselves with the workout. Again, that's a distraction, but really trying to become present in our workout. That's where the ideas start to flow. That's where we are creating that space so that we can come up with creative solutions. That's where we're at our greatest capacity. We're creating awareness so that instead of our mind running the show or our ego running the show, we are using them as tools to help us powerfully create what we want. Not being the victim to our mind or the victim to our ego, but really working together in harmony.
Yeah, for sure. And I do keep the exercises. I would say, like, they're always going to be difficult because that's where the growth is, but nothing is impossible. And if you feel like it's impossible today, then we'll just do something else.
Yeah.
Like, that's something a lot of people I notice are afraid of. And when they're talking about personal training or coaching or anything like that, it's like, oh, well, I want to do that, but I'm not strong enough yet. Oh, I want to do that, but I don't have enough endurance yet. Or like, I'm not healthy. And I'm like, well, that's why you do this. You do this in order to be that. And I will teach you how. Like, I will guide you through it. Like, you don't have to know everything. I don't even know, like, where we got this idea from that you have to do this big, heavy, hard stuff right off the bat. And I look at some people and I'm like, this is just not safe.
Baby steps.
Like, like, this is not for you. Like, we'll go out for a walk, you know what I mean? Or you'll sit on that couch and we'll do your exercises there, because you need to learn how to get up and down, on and off of that couch without hurting yourself. And I actually have had clients where, like, their actual problem was that they were morbidly obese, sitting on the couch, and they were being injured from the couch. Isn't that insane? And everybody's like, I don't understand. And I'm like, no. It's the couch. It's the car and the couch. Like, and this is manageable. And you just have to know that when you're sitting in that way and you're moving in that way, because it creates a repetitive movement. And that is the problem, that you're weakened. And then you're asking your joints to do stuff like slide in ways that are not good for them. So if you have knee pain on the outside and you're getting in and out of the car a lot and you're largely untrained, meaning you're not working out very often or at all, possibly you have some inflammation, and possibly you're overweight, probably more than just 20 pounds. If you're getting out of the car in a particular way, you're going to end up having like an overuse injury in your knee. And the solution to that, just like the immediate solution to that, not the be all end all, but the immediate solution to that is actually, when you're sitting in your car seat, to slide your whole body to face the door and then get out with everything squared right in front of you. Because what you're doing otherwise, is you're bringing your foot out and then expecting this knee over, pretending this is a knee, pretending this knee over here is supposed to take all of your weight, or at least half of it, in a position where it is not strong and it is not squared off. So it's in a position that's I can't do it with my joints in here, but like it's not straight on. You know what I mean?
It's
And
not
so you're,
supported because it's
it's
out of
not support.
alignment. And
Thank you.
is this
Alignment.
not a
I
metaphor for
think that's,
business too? Because we will
yes.
try and do shit that's out of alignment all the time. And we will try and force a square peg in a round hole to try and do something that's not in alignment. And the solution is to first get into alignment.
Calling all strong women. Are you trapped in a cycle of people pleasing? Are you tired of saying yes when you really mean no? Have you been living for everyone but yourself? Welcome to Authenticity Unleashed. Imagine a life where you call the shots. Imagine living truly happy and free. Authenticity Unleashed was designed just for you so that you can create the life and relationships that you desire and deserve. Picture setting boundaries without guilt and building relationships that truly lift you up. Ready for a new adventure? Register now and start your journey to a more authentic you. Craving more personalized support? Upgrade now and get tailored one-on-one guidance. Your life, your rules, your moment to shine. This is your Authenticity Unleashed.
And the solution is to first get into alignment, get into a space of awareness of what is in alignment. And so if you haven't had exercise experience, you just might not be aware. And that's okay. That's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to shift your awareness so that things can be different and better, ideally, right?
Absolutely.
So that we are not injuring ourselves or self-sabotaging ourselves or getting in our own fucking way, so that we can create what we want that feels really good for us and that supports us in creating, the life experiences ultimately that we really want. That is in our power. And yet we can be so scared to step out and try something different because we have a fear of looking silly, which is honestly a little bit ridiculous, because when you were a child, I know this is probably a common metaphor, when you started learning to walk, you didn't fall down once and be like, oh, I suck at that, I'm not doing that again.
Right.
No, you kept at it. And thank God, because now here you are, fully grown. And you can use the same experience. But, I see it with my kids. If they're not really good at something right off the bat, they have so much resistance to even trying. And it's like, well, hold on a minute, because where did we get this idea that we have to be fucking perfect before we can try something? Because that is really ultimately going to serve only to hold us back.
Yeah.
We can't, first of all, perfection is a mirage. Like you're never going to get there. It's an illusion. It's something you're going to continue chasing forever. And you are very unlikely ever going to get there. And if you should, quote unquote, get there, you won't stay there, because that's just not the human way. Everything is always changing and evolving. And if you should, so, we have to recognize that we have to take the actions. The right aligned actions, right, will be the best ones for us. So starting with that awareness, starting to line up what are the right aligned steps for us? How can we become aware of what we want to create and the best way of creating it? Sometimes we just have to get out of our own damn way.
It's so true. It's so true. And like, I just want to, it's coming up for me too, that a lot of times the confidence are really lacking for a lot of entrepreneurs. And that's another thing where the exercise and the movement and, being present, it's really going to clear that up. And when that starts to clear, all of these things that you were just talking about, they start to kind of go away. They start to kind of just dissipate, just like the frustration, the anxiety, the heightened feelings and frustrations of when you come in will dissipate with the movement. So will, over time, the brain fog, especially when you add in good nutrition, whatever that means for you, and building yourself up. The stronger you are physically, the more confident you are in your body and its movements, and that it's going to do what you want. And this is very subconscious usually. But you're more confident that it's going to do what you want it to do when you want it to do it. That you're going to look the way you want to look in a given situation. And not only that, when you're working out, you're actually getting more testosterone, you're getting more other hormones, you're actually becoming, by virtue of movement and the changes in your hormones and the concentrations, you are actually becoming more assertive. It actually makes you immediately more assertive. And something that you can do that is so small yet so big. And so when you're going to go into a meeting, into a consultation call, into the boardroom, whatever it is for you, number one, just a few little stretches and releases and you will feel so much better. But if you need to boost yourself up, something so simple, and if you've never read the book Presence by Amy Cuddy, she's a researcher. I love this book. But or she has a TED Talk that's like super, super fun. And, it's like a nice bite-sized piece, is if you just make yourself big, however, like I'm just doing this or bringing my hands behind me, just literally taking up physical space, sitting like a man. Like you don't have to sit with your legs crossed, ladies. This is not the 1940s. You belong here and you can sit basically however you want. I mean, it's your job, it's your business. You can, within whatever you feel comfortable in, but having your legs open wider, having your arms open wider. If you look at a boardroom typically and you see the men and the women, are they sitting in the same way? Probably not.
Yeah.
The women are typically closed. They're, taking notes closer in. They're huddling together. Their legs are pressed together. They're making themselves really small. They have no idea that they're doing it because nobody talks about it, but they are, right? We've been taught and conditioned over so many years. And then you look at the men in the room, and the men in the room, they're like, well, I don't know about that. I mean, you talk to, and that's how they're discussing things, right? And the women are like, well, but so I'm thinking that, and the men dominate typically the conversation. Well, why? Not because they're smarter, not because they're better, not because they know more, but societal reasons we won't get into. And they are comfortable.
Patriarchy.
I wasn't going to say anything. And I missed it. I missed that. Anyway, that opportunity has chewed by. But yeah, so just making yourself bigger. And so her recommendation, Amy Cuddy's recommendation, is to actually go into the bathroom, put your hands on your hips, stand up really tall, confident.
Superwoman pose.
And go into Superwoman pose and look yourself in the eye, in the mirror, standing in Superwoman pose, and just be there. I think this is even better. I've actually started taking a lot of my photos like this. I am really embracing my body a lot more now. A lot of times I feel like even being a trainer that I should look different than I do. And so I've been wearing more feminine attire and taking more pictures. And I think the pose that I like the best, and I would love to make a logo out of it one day, is just arms and legs apart in basically starfish, just standing up and
taking up all the fucking space.
Taking up all the fucking space in a mini skirt. You know what I mean? I'm like, next I have to do it in a bikini, really own that. That's scary. That's really scary. But I'm having a lot of fun just embracing myself and taking up that space and really soaking in those amazing changes, the physiological changes that are happening in my body, and being like, I'm going to do this more and more and more. So I feel better and better and better. So I am more confident so that I can make these moves. And I will tell you, I started doing this. My birthday was July 6th, and I decided to be all in on my birthday this year. And I bought the shiniest, shortest dress I've ever worn. And it was mermaid sequins, and it was awesome. Yeah. And I did that pose for the first time, and I was like, this is great. I'm owning everything. And I've been kind of doing it ever since. And I took a trip to Miami a week and a half ago, and I was like, you know what? This place is crazy, but also they are so down with embracing anything. You can walk into a food establishment in a thong bikini and be served. And it's totally normal. And I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to feed off of this good energy, And I know a lot of people don't see that as good energy. It's like, oh my God. But to me, I'm just like, wow, like she was so gorgeous and so confident and so comfortable in this space where I would never. Also, because I don't want to sit on a seat without pants on personally.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
that's
get it.
just me. No shade. But so yeah, I started doing that and I feel like it's working.
Yeah. It's a whole new world when you start to just be okay with yourself.
Yes.
It really opens up things and it does require, honestly, because so many of us get trapped in this, like, well, what will they think? What will they say? It's so
Right.
easy to get sucked into that. But here's the thing,
They're
is
not
that
your
whatever
people.
they have to say actually doesn't really pertain to you. It's their perspective, and that's their comparing themselves to you when they
Yeah.
say whatever they have to say about you. So if
Yeah.
you feel good, if you are loving yourself, it doesn't matter what other people have to say or think. And the thing is, when you are in that state, you no longer have negative projections to put out into the world either. So guess
Right.
what? You stop attracting the same sort of experiences back. You
Yeah.
start creating loving and abundant experiences, connections, friendships. And you can only find your people when you are showing up as fully yourself. When you're wearing masks, when you're pretending, when you're uncomfortable with in your own skin, you are not going to attract the people who are going to feel quite that same way. And even if you did, you might come around some of those people, but you won't experience and receive that in the same way until you start to receive it for yourself, within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a real gift that you can give to yourself. Moving your body does not have to be complicated. Motivation, people think that they're just going to look for their motivation. They need to find some motivation. They're not sure where it is. They're not sure why everyone else is more motivated than they are. And they're hearing their thoughts. They're telling them they're not really very motivated. Motivation comes from taking action. It does not come from thinking about how can I get motivated. It comes from doing the first baby step. You don't need to go all the way in right off the hop. It's actually a terrible idea as far as I've found anytime I was personal training, doing nutrition coaching. If you try and go too far too fast, you are going to hit the wall and you're going to be like, too hard, I'm out. If you take the baby steps, you will find the motivation comes when you take action. You will find that the clarity also comes from taking action. How do you know what is or isn't aligned for you unless you do a little exploring? You've got to ask the questions. You've got to take some actions. You've got to see what literally feels right and aligned within you as you go about doing it. And how better to find out what doesn't work, hello, hard way, right? Than to experience some things that aren't working. There's just really no better teacher than life. And the more we can open to the awareness, the less we can spend our time suffering and in pain and in discomfort. And we can consciously choose the things that really are truly in alignment for us and choose to create relationships with people who are a match, who are in alignment for us to help us continue on our journey of growth and expansion. And that's where the magic lies. This experience of being a human isn't about suffering and working a 9-to-5 job for 40 years and then what? Being old and quote unquote old, like feel old and unhealthy and unable to do the things that we truly want. Like that's not the goal. That's not the vibe. We want to be really intentional and conscious about creating those experiences at every opportunity. Life is too short to wait for someday.
Yeah, it's true. It is. It's definitely too short to wait for someday. And, thinking, oh, it'll get better. It'll get better. It'll get better. I have watched multiple people participate in their long-term death. And that participation is them not thinking about healing. They are not taking the steps and owning their own power.
Yeah.
They have given it away to their doctors, pretty much ultimately, mostly doctors. And in doing so, they are literally watching themselves die and hoping for the best. They think that they are living. They think that they are on the path of life, when in reality, they're actually on the path of, this is like their purgatory, basically. They're on the path of death. Their journey, this is their journey to their death. And I mean, it's, all of us are dying every moment.
Every single day, one step closer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is what it is. But when they have given their power away and they're like, oh, I hope I wake up in the morning and feel better. And meanwhile, they're on 10 different medications to make up for the medications that they were put on first. And all of these things, they're not realizing that they are literally letting their life slip by. They're hoping for life.
Yeah.
But they're not being present in the journey to experience it. They are not actively using their internal power to live. They're just waiting to live. And that, I think, is really tough. But luckily, we're all here now, and hopefully we can see, we can get busy living or we can get busy dying. And
it's never too late to make a change and to
never too
claim
late. And
that power.
Exactly. And when you claim that power, really, like, the crux of all of this is that if you claim your own power internally, you take care of your health, your wellness, your physical wellness, your mental wellness, all of that will translate into your business. If you do not have one or all of those things, your business is never going to be what you want it to be. Or maybe the business is, but your life isn't, and you're blaming it on the business, or that you're thinking that something is here or there or wherever. But really, it comes from within. So my somatic business coaching was really a way for me to hopefully give a group of people an aha moment to say, I'm struggling in my business. Let me take care of me, so that I can not struggle in my business so much. Because that's sometimes, I think, an easier entry point than saying, like, I'm struggling in my business and my life. I better go take care of myself. Like, people don't really say that. People don't really do that. People don't really want to invest in that. But if you say, I'm struggling in my business. Oh, and you can help me in my business, which means that you can help me with my finances, which means you can help me with my prosperity, which means to me that you can help me with my happiness. Okay. Then it's like, all right, I can do this. I can invest in this because it's for my business. But if you say to especially a woman, especially a mom in business, like, oh, well, why don't you come and invest in yourself and everything will get better? She's like, I don't have time for that. I got a business. I got kids. I got this. I got that. And so I'm hoping that this is going to become just the most beautiful experience for people to be able to, especially women in business. I work with a lot of different types of people, but especially women in business and moms in business. And I'm just really hoping that this catches on like wildfire. And because I see it work all the time, I'm seeing it work. But I just think that this should be like a global thing, where we can say, okay, if your entry point is to make your business better, let me give you everything that you as a human need.
Yeah.
And then it'll expand to your business. But in the meantime, we've actually healed all of the things that really needed work first. It's like a little bit sneaky.
It's the whole human approach. That's the way I look at it. Is, yes, you want this outcome over here, but if you're not bringing all the pieces together, if you're not caring for yourself, which you are your business's greatest asset, right? If you are not caring for that asset, if you are not putting in the work to grow yourself, it's going to show up in other ways. It's going to be mirrored in your business, in your relationship with your kids, in many different ways, in your health outwardly. And so this inner work is pivotal to all of those experiences. And this is why I do a lot of what I do, is because I started with the health stuff and realized this is a small piece. This piece has ripple effects, but ultimately this is a small piece of the puzzle that can unlock other pieces, and bringing together all aspects of your life. You don't need to suffer in one area in order to succeed in another. That's another lie we bought, for too long, that,
Yes.
and without going way down the feminist rabbit hole,
Oh my
feel
gosh.
like
Yeah.
we have had this idea as well that we can have and do and be it all to the extreme, where there are so much expectations that now we've taken on more than we truly want to have and be and do in order to appease the people around us. So really, this whole human approach is bringing it back to you.
Yeah.
What do you truly desire in life? What experiences do you want to have? Because to me, that's way more important than what outcomes you want to create. What experiences? It's about the journey. The destination is like a one stop. And then, you know what? There's never a final destination anyways until we're done here. So let's stop focusing on getting to the destination and assuming that that's where we're going to find what we seek. What we're seeking is actually the journey itself, the experience that we're having. So how can we intentionally create that? How can we move those emotions through our body? How can we create space and time for ourselves to live out of an abundance of overflow, rather than trying to take time, trying to force time, or simply letting time rule us instead of us living in the moment?
Yeah.
Cortney, tell us where we can get in touch with you. And if you have any, I did touch on your course a little bit, but please do share a little bit more about that as we head into our wrap up.
Yeah, so you can find me at HudsonValleyPeakPerformance.com, or you can email me at HudsonValleyPeakPerformance@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook. I have my own women in business group as well, where we go over some similar stuff to you. I don't do as many interviews, more exercise based, obviously. But I do love the networking part. That's why I love going to all your networking things when I can make it too. And on Instagram, and I'm at Cortney Whitebay, Cortney, Whitebay, white like the color, bay like the ocean, on Instagram. So that's actually where I hang out the most, is on Instagram. And I have a subscription on there, which I've lowered down to 99 cents for everybody. So if anybody wants to jump in on that,
Awesome.
Fun there.
Fantastic. As we wrap up this incredible masterclass, do you have any other final perspective shifts or ideas, or an action step maybe that they might want to take today?
Well, I have two little catchphrases that I feel like are really poignant, which I haven't said, but they come up really consistently with my clients and work with them. And one is prevention before intervention. If you prevent it, and I always say this, like, if you are my client, you will never be my patient. And that's important. So prevent any illness first, because intervening on it afterwards is a lot harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same thing in your business. If you can set up the foundation in the beginning, then it's going to be a lot easier to have a flourishing business. If you only want to work 40 hours a week during these times, from 8 to 5, and then you go out and you start booking people at 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. and whatever, like, you're not setting up a good foundation. You're going to burn out. And the other one is for anybody who is feeling stuck in a scared way and like, I don't know how to do this. I don't want people to see me. Just like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this or that or whatever. Everybody is different. Everybody is different every day. So not only is my body different than yours, and I'm going to be able to do different things than you, and you're going to be able to do different things from me, but my body today is not the same as it was yesterday or last week.
Yeah.
I can do things today I couldn't do then. I could do things then I can't do today. Okay, fine. My body is just different today. That doesn't mean that I, did a bad job, or that I'm a bad person, or I'm not taking care of myself. It just means that it's different today than it was another day. And so that's like twofold, because sometimes people feel something in their body and they get scared. It's a problem, and it's not. It's just a hiccup, and it'll go away. And if that hiccup persists, then you got to find somebody to help you make it go away. But it's not a problem until you ignore it. So I also notice a lot of people freaking out that like, oh, I feel this and something is terribly wrong and I'm going to have to go get started. I'm like, whoa, this started like last week. Like, you're okay. This is normal. You just did this or you just did that or whatever. And you'll either sleep it off or you can stretch it out or you can start strengthening it and it'll disappear. So you don't have to be scared. Bodies do lots of weird shit and it's pretty much all normal.
Yeah, that's really helpful to keep in mind as far as all the things. We're all unique. We're all having our own unique human experience. Yeah. And the freedom comes when we stop judging ourselves for it. So thank you so much for sharing this incredible conversation. I hope this encourages some of our listeners to go out there and just move your body, at least in a nurturing, loving kind of way, whatever that feels like for you today. It could be small. It's okay. So with that, I love you all. Now let's go do some epic shit, shall we? Mwah!
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Create Your Happy's special bonus season. I trust this real, raw, uncut conversation will fuel your inner fire and provide you with the practical action steps needed to propel you forward. It's time to unlock your path to consciously creating an impact and leaving your legacy. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share with other women in your life who could use a little extra inspiration today. My guest and I would love to hear from you. You'll find the links to connect with us both in the show notes. And if you're ready to take your life, relationship, and business to the next level, I invite you to consider working with me one-on-one. Together, we'll up-level every aspect of your beautiful human journey to create the fulfilling relationships that you desire and deserve. Reach out to learn more about how we can embark on this transformative journey together. As always, get out there, have fun, be you, and create your happy.